Greetings, chess fans. Another exciting day here on the 58th International Biel Chess Festival is officially over. We just saw a game played more than 100 moves. Two games were decisive. There was a lot of drama, time scramble, missed opportunities, and emotions seen on the screen. And that's why we have selected the game of the day. Friedrich Swane, the young grandmaster from Germany, playing against Aravind Chidambaram. So this is going to be a very exciting game. So let's see what happened in this remarkable game. So Friedrich was playing with the white color. The game opened up with e4, c5, knight f3, e6, the fighting Sicilian Paulsen. And after d4, knight x on d4, here Aravind played knight c6. The first surprise after knight c3 is not the classical queen c7, which is the start of the Sicilian Tamanov. Rather, here black played a6 for different unique properties of the position. Here the young German played bishop e3, knight f6, a3, stopping bishop b4 ideas. Black played bishop e7, and after f4 we have a typical Sicilian Scheveningen position. Black played d6, queen f3, one of the most ambitious way to play, long castle, potentially with g4 and g5 ideas, and that's why here Aravind immediately stopped the white's intentions and he played e5. Knight x on c6 was played. Here Swane found a way to complicate matters. He took on e5, proceeded with bishop c4, followed by rook b8, targeted pawn on b2, white played b3, and here black played queen a5. In hindsight, this maybe was not the best decision, because after bishop d2, queen b6, here the Indian grandmaster was trying to hold the white king in the center, and maybe he was looking for potential repetition of the position. Here white played a knight a4. The problem for black that queen d4 quite doesn't work, hitting the rook on a1 and pawn on e4, because after bishop c3, queen e4, knight x on e4, white has a simple move, bishop e5, and simply better positioned pieces. Now that's why here after knight a4, the Indian grandmaster has to retreat. h3 was a very nice move, controlling the g4 square, followed by short castle, and bishop b7. And around here, both players were probably on the same page that Aravind is prepping the idea of c5, rook d8, and rook d4 in the style of the great Tigran Petrosian, who essentially made a career by positional exchange sacrifices. So here bishop e3 was played, c5, knight c3, and since white is thinking about an idea to play bishop g5, take on f6, and exploit weak on d5 square, Aravind played h6. Now this is something that he might regret in different lines, because now white had an idea in many lines to play queen g3 and use the pawn on h6 as a target. The first thing, though, what Friedrich did, he doubled the rooks at the file, rook f2, rook d8, and rook d1. Black already had a difficult position here, and Aravind attempted to complicate matters with rook d4. So his idea was, if white's going to accept it and take the exchange, after c takes and knight e5, there's a couple of trades like bishop d5, potentially bishop d5, knight takes, e takes, and bishop takes on a3, and the position is simply very unclear. But here Swane played the correct move, queen g3, targeting pawn on h7, and also the problem is for black that also rook takes on f6 is a big threat. So if black would play king h7, rook takes on f6 with the double rook sacrifice would immediately seal the deal in favor for white, because the pawns on h6 and f6 are weaknesses, and white has enough pieces to deliver a winning attack. So that's why here Aravind played queen d6, watching out for the f6 square, still willing to sacrifice an exchange, and this is where Swane missed a straight victory. He could have played here bishop takes on h6 here. Clearly g takes on h6 is not possible, and g6 will be just a mate on the board because of the pin at the a2 g8 diagonal. Now Aravind had calculated knight h5, but white just plays queen g4 here, and here the problem is that after queen takes on h6, white simply plays bishop takes on f7. If the king retreats, the knight on h5 is falling, white has two extra pawns, rook f7 follows by rook f7, and black black's army is simply disorganized on top of white's material advantage. Also, after bishop takes on h6, knight h5, queen g4, probably Arvin's idea was to play rook takes on c4, but this has a spectacular refutation. Here, I think Svanen missed that he can play queen takes on h5, and again, after queen h6, there's going to be a trade, and the black rook on c4 is simply taken, and the point is after rook takes on c3, white wins with a pretty simple but cute shot, bishop takes on g7. Now this enables checkmate on h8 threat, and after king takes on g7, rook takes on f7, takes on f7, king g8 would be a mate on the board. It was a bit surprising that Svanen missed this, and instead he played rook f5, aiming for a different idea. And somehow this happens. You miss ideas when you think you see a better idea. Now the pawn on e5 is under attack. Here the young Indian played rook takes on c4, b takes on c4, and played knight takes on e4. And now probably Svanen was pretty happy with this position from afar, because after queen takes on e5, it seems that white simply has the extra exchange. However, after knight takes on c3, queen takes on c3, here Arvin proved that black has plenty of compensation, namely the pawn on g2 is under attack. You need to watch out also for bishop d6, and suddenly black gets a lot of activity. Now here Svanen was slowly approaching the dime scramble. He played rook f2, bishop f6. Arvind was attempting to complicate matters as much as he could. Queen b3, bishop e4, going for super activity. Bishop takes on c5, rook c8, and starting here, Svanen was already approaching a pretty serious time scramble, because this was move 29 with only 4 minutes or 42 seconds on the clock, and again no increment until move 40. So here the young German spent quite a bit of time for the next couple of moves. You could see all kinds of threats from black. So he played c5, rook c7. He's burning time with every single move. Rook b7, queen a4, and finally the critical moment arose here. After the only move, bishop f4, bishop c6, you could see it on the camera that the young German was incredibly unhappy. He believed he already had missed a victory, and he played queen c4, clearly unhappy about his earlier choices. According to an engine, he was still winning after queen takes on a6, and we can only speculate what happened here. I think he simply hallucinated that after bishop d4 check, there's going to be some ideas like king h1 and bishop takes on g2, leaving the queen on a6 defenseless. Actually, could have played king h2, and black doesn't have anything than to play bishop takes on c5 and rely on some tricks. The game would have definitely still would have continued, and the Indian Grandmaster would have tried some tricks, but unfortunately for the German and his fans, he played queen c4. Now, after bishop b5, white had nothing better than to sacrifice the queen and hope for some sort of a fortress. So here rook a7 was played. Arvind was not entirely sure if it's a good idea to trade the rooks, and he attempted to keep all the heavy pieces on the board. And after queen c2, bishop d6, finally here there was another crazy moment. Essentially, before playing rook f3, Svanen was holding his hand over the board. Well, his opponent had like 6 minutes on the clock, because Svanen had to make the only move to reach the next time control with 2 seconds on the clock. Again, with no increment, so it was pretty amazing to follow, but he did it. He did play rook f3, hoping for some sort of a fortress. Here the Indian played the very strong move b4, and after a takes on b4, he did not go after the pawn on b4, but he gave this very sneak attack rook a2, rook g3, queen f2 check, and started to go for the mate. So here Svanen tried his final chance. If he would have played rook f3, queen g1 check, king g3, rook a2, white's position would simply collapse, because the pawn on g2 cannot be defended. So Svanen found an idea to give a check here and play rook takes on g7. A genius idea. The point here is after king takes on g7, bishop e5 check, white is attempting to build up a fortress. So after king g6, I think here Svanen could have tried not to give the check on g8, but perhaps take on a1. And here after queen f4 check, the bishop at a1 is lost, but white can attempt to build some kind of a fortress. So during the game commentary, I was considering, is it possible to play something like King G1, Queen C1, King F2, Queen takes on A1, and let's say play Rook E4. So according to an engine, this is still somehow winning, but at least you can see the idea. White wants to play Rook F4, G3, H4, and build a fortress. So was this a fortress? We'll never know, because it didn't happen in the game, but it was definitely worth a shot. So Svanet had thought of a different fortress. He gave a check on g8 first, and after king f5, he took on a1, clearly hoping that after the check on g3, that black would go after the bishop. For example, queen c1 check, king g2, queen takes on a1, and now play the same idea, rook g4, which according to an engine is a fortress after rook f4 or rook h4 and then play h4. And black apparently cannot make a progress. But the last move he played, king h1, was pretty unfortunate because after king e4, black is just crashing through and Svane had to resign. It was better shot try to play king g1. Of course, black still would have played king e4. Objectively, the game is losing according to an engine, but still the game can be prolonged with rook a8 with an idea to meet king f3 with rook a3 check. Alas, it did not happen, and Arvind scored a very, very important victory. Now, let's check the current standings after 2 rounds of the classical tournament to be played, including the rapid tournament. This is the current situation in the triathlon. Thanks to the victory, Arvind now is spearheading the tournament with 12.5 points. Fedoseev, who shared today 1.5 points together with Merzin, he is right now in the second place. Also, Wojtaszek is not so far behind with 9 points. He was unable to score a victory for the second time in a row with a white color. In the meantime, in the challengers, we have one clear leader, and his name is Nicolas Theodorou. He played a sensational game today with a black color, outplaying David Navarra, who slightly pushed too many chances in his game against Theodorou and was punished accordingly. Aran Jacobian now is in the second place with 12.5 points. He was, for most of the part of the game, under pressure against Daniel Darda, but the young Armenian was precise and was able to play to a draw. Finally, the longest game of the day was Makun's game against Rinat Jumabayev. Originally, Jumabayev had some winning chances. Then in the end, Makun was long pressing 2 points against 1 in a queen endgame, theoretically drawn position, but ultimately the Kazakhstan Grandmaster was successful and held the game to a draw. So really a long and exciting day here in Biel Congress Center. The action is going to continue tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. So the 58th Biel International Chess Festival is at full swing. If you want to watch it live, come back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time and see it live for yourself. In the meantime, stay tuned.